Now to this, a crucial hearing in Boston today in Harvard University's lawsuit against the Trump administration, the Ivy League school trying to restore over $2 billion in federal funding after the White House froze that cash over Harvard's tepid response to on-campus anti-Semitism. Both sides asking the Obama-nominated judge for a summary judgment, which would decide the case without a trial. President Trump not expecting much from the judge, posting today on Truth Social, quote, "When she rules against us, we will immediately appeal and win. Also, the government will stop the practice of giving away many billions of dollars to Harvard, much of which has been given without explanation." Joining us now, White House senior policy strategist and Harvard Law School graduate May Mailman. May, thank you so much for joining us today. So what is the outlook from your standpoint on this case?
Okay, well, if it was just on the law, we would definitely win. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how much law there is in the District of Massachusetts. But the simple fact of the matter is, on a simple procedural ground, if you want to sue the government because you want money, you feel like your rights under a contract have been violated, which is basically what Harvard wants. They want money. They want your money, the taxpayers' money. Then you go to the Court of Federal Claims. But they didn't go to the Court of Federal Claims. They went to the District of Massachusetts for a good reason, because they think that they're going to win there. Because they basically are frequent flyers. There's a thumb on the scale. These are judges that are appointed by Obama. And as the president has said, are not going to give us a fair shake. Now, when the judge rules against us, as President Trump said, we're going to immediately appeal to the First Circuit. And then from the First Circuit on to the Supreme Court. And here's the great news about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has already decided this issue. They've said that when the government takes funds, you have to go to this Court of Federal Claims. Now, on the other issues, we feel really good as well. This is taxpayer money. Right. The federal government doesn't have to give taxpayer money to Harvard. And so, their whole basis of their lawsuit is sort of frivolous.
It is kind of remarkable to listen to them argue that their First Amendment right includes the right for taxpayers to give them billions of dollars. I'm not familiar with that part of the First Amendment, but I would like personally to sign up for it if that is part of the First Amendment. I want to read to you real quickly another one of President Trump's truths. Harvard has $52 billion sitting in the bank, and yet they are anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, and anti-American. Much of this money comes from the USA, all of it to the detriment of other schools, colleges, and institutions, and we are not going to allow this unfair situation to happen any longer. May, tell me this. This is probably a really good political fight. Aside from the legal argument that you laid out brilliantly just there, it's also a very good political fight for this administration.
Yeah, well, there are people who are having to take out second jobs. They're wondering whether their kids can go to soccer practice. Meanwhile, the taxpayers are having to fund Harvard and give them all sorts of six-figure salaries for their people who are doing bureaucratic oversight, even though they have a $52 billion endowment, which is larger than the GDPs of 100 countries. Right. So if Harvard really feels like the things that they're doing there are valuable, then they can invest in that. This is a free country. If you want to spend money on this, then go ahead. But you do not have a right, and you certainly don't have a First Amendment right, to force other people to pay that to you. And so what President Trump would like to do is the amount of money that we're spending on education, you know where that should be going? That should be going to training our next great AI experts, right? There are trade schools that exist, that they can be built, that people are going to do things, they're going to build things. And that's what we want to see. We want to see effective use of taxpayer funds to build a new great frontier for all Americans.
Indeed. And of course, I also think it's an astonishing tell that when the previous administration, President Biden, was talking about wanting to erase student debt, he never talked about going after those huge endowments of places like Harvard. May, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Charlie.
Settlement talks between the Trump administration and Harvard University have stalled, according to a report from the New York Times published Saturday. The White House has not issued any new demands to Harvard as part of a potential deal to restore billions of dollars in research funding and end a crush of federal investigations. But the steady back and forth that characterized earlier talks has significantly slowed in recent weeks, the Times reported. One major reason is an emerging divide within the administration between aides eager to deliver President Trump a political victory by announcing a deal and those who contend the current framework is too favorable to Harvard. Some Trump advisors argue that one way to strengthen the agreement would be to subject Harvard to an independent monitor who would ensure compliance. Harvard has consistently opposed that idea. Earlier this year, the Trump administration froze $2.2 billion in funding to the university and threatened to revoke its tax-exempt status due to the Ivy League school's alleged failure to address anti-Semitism on campus. The Department of Education's Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism announced on May 13th it was cutting $450 million in grants, stating Harvard has repeatedly failed to confront the pervasive race discrimination and anti-Semitic harassment plaguing its campus. In the wake of the Hamas terrorist attack against Israel on October 7, 2023, Harvard successfully challenged the freeze in court, with Judge Allison D. Burroughs issuing a sharp ruling against the administration on Wednesday, accusing it of weaponizing anti-Semitism as a pretext for an ideologically motivated assault on the university. According to The Times, the slowdown in talks also reflects the administration adjusting to the departure of May Mailman, the White House senior policy strategist, who played a key role in orchestrating pressure against several Ivy League universities. The Trump administration and Harvard nearly reached a settlement last month. The framework called for Harvard to spend $500 million on workforce programs in exchange for the restoration of billions in federal funding. "We want nothing less than $500 million from Harvard. They've been very bad. Don't negotiate," Trump told Education Secretary Linda McMahon last week. The Times reported that some officials in the Trump administration are pushing for additional concessions from Harvard before a deal is made. Such a scenario has spooked some aides, who are worried about any response that overshadows the $500 million price tag that remains a top priority for the president, the Times claimed. A White House official told the Times that discussions were ongoing among Trump and his advisors over a settlement that would change the course of higher education in this country. Harvard declined to comment.